Hey there everybody, Joe here. Thanks for tuning in again. This is my attempt to depict the ancient description of this creature named the Leviathan in the book of Job. As I was inspired by this description that seemed very anatomical, I thought it would be just a fun thrill to try to do a painting of it. As a lover of dragons and monsters, something I loved drawing pictures of when I was younger, and haven't had a lot of opportunities to do in my career because, well, people don't want to, have big monsters on their living room walls. I get hired to paint pretty things. This is a lot of fun for me and a good study on muscles and perspective of my people and my creature. I mean, this is a real fun project for me to try to improve those skills as well. This week I was focusing a lot on the background, and so when I do a night sky, I'm basically doing a daytime sky. So you could look at my same methods of doing a daytime sky and my color choices and really just add black to everything. And it's a nighttime sky. You know, when I paint a daytime sky and then the actual lights in the room where that painting or that mural is, when those lights get dim, it will look like an evening sky. I'm thinking moonlight instead of sunlight, but the light from the moon is light that's coming from the sun anyway, right? So it's really just less of the same light. And it's the same atmosphere, so I still have the blue. Well, there is an adjustment that has to be made, though, if you're adding black to darken a sky. Blue tends to turn greener when you add black. To make up for that change of color, if you don't want that real turquoise color in the sky, it doesn't necessarily look bad. I just think it looks more natural. If I add this magenta here to compensate, it kills the green hue. This is magenta, and in any color that looks like this is going to accomplish the same goal of not allowing it to look so green. So I used a lot of that. Even in my sky, I used that. And then I just used more of it because, as a general rule, the shadows on clouds are more violet than the blue of the sky. So I always make those shadows so there's more of that magenta color in the shadows in these clouds. When I did the white lining, I added red. Red is more orange, you know. If I'm just thinking of the direction that I go, moving from this magenta to a red, this is closer to violet, so I'm just thinking you move more toward the orange to get to red. Well, I add red to the white in order to make it look like natural light, because I'm trying to achieve that effect still. As the bright white on the edge of the cloud moves toward the violet shadow, I have that rule of shifting hues that I'm trying to employ. As an object gets lit up more, it moves toward the yellow part of the spectrum. As it gets dimmer, it moves toward the violet part of the spectrum. It might go from the yellow to the violet through the green side, yellow, green, blue, violet, or it might go through the orange side, yellow, orange, red, violet. But either way, it's moving toward the violet. My point in all this jibber jabber is that I'm trying to use that subtly in even these, what appears to be this monochromatic scene with just these bluish colored clouds. I'm still using that because just the subtle use of it helps. So, in the end, my shadow on my clouds is more violet. It moves toward red before it gets to the white that is on the edge, which is not actually white, it's just a light gray. So I have that rule represented. It's just a shift of the hue. It doesn't necessarily have to go all the way to yellow. It's just a direction. It's like my daytime skies. My clouds have that transitionary color. It happens to be red, just like when I do a daytime sky. And that's the transition between my light white edge of the cloud and the shadow. And then I add black, but since I'm adding black, I also add this magenta color to keep my blues from getting too green. That was my color strategy on my sky. My technique with the brush is I might just leave the sky as it is. This was just kind of a once over. My plan was to get it in place with real basic technique, but I like the way that sky is kind of blurry and obscured, and you can even still see a lot of brush strokes, but I kind of like the artistic flair it leaves to the background. Well, this is a technique I use a lot where I'm putting the paint on, I put it on really heavy, at first, and then I start spreading it out. I put the colors I want to mix on, then I mix them together, and then I adjust if I need to add more. But once I start spreading it around, I'm conscious of how heavy it is. And so I get it distributed on the canvas, and as it starts to get tacky, which means, if you don't know what I mean by tacky, I just mean that it's almost dry, but not dry. It's still spreadable, but it's just starting to get thicker. Well, if you take the brush, I dry it off on the canvas somewhere, and then I do a couple strokes over that tacky area that I've just put paint on, and it blurs it out. It does this real nice job of blending the colors together. So I'll do a real sharp image where I'm just laying the paint on and my edge might be real sharp, and then I use that technique to blur it. But the trick with that technique is timing. It's really all about timing and keeping the paint the right thickness, because if I put it on too thin, then it'll dry too fast, and by the time I get done with this spot that's right next to it, this one's dry, this one's not, and I can't just drag the brush over it and get that effect. I have to get it all heavy enough that I have a good amount of area that's all at that similar drying stage, and then I can quickly drag the brush across and it blurs it right together. If you do it too early, and you learn this by trial and error, you just practice. If you do it too early, it drags all the paint together. I mean, it's obvious that it's just too wet, and it just drags everything together, and you don't preserve your image. If you do it too late, then it skips and leaves little pull marks, and you don't get the nice blending. So timing, like I said, is everything. But it's a nice technique because it very quickly creates an interesting background, and it takes out detail. The value of removing detail is that imagination fills it in, and where imagination fills in detail, it fills it in the way it wants to see it. It does it right. You never imagine wrong details. When you're imagining a picture, you imagine it the way you want to see it. At least that's my mind. I mean, I don't look at a picture and imagine mistakes that aren't there. You know, you imagine what would look good. So your imagination fills in the details right. So the more you can leave to imagination, the better. So in that sense, less is more. Now it's fun finally getting to some of the details on my Leviathan. It adds perspective. So now not only do I have the perspective of size and shape and my reflections, but now I'm adding lines. You know, I have these more round shapes, these lines that are crisscrossing on the front of the face. Well, they get real scrunched together where I'm tightening up my brush strokes and making them, just like in my landscapes, you know, when I'm doing distant water, I'm using a lot of real squished horizontal brush strokes. I have multiple elements all telling the same story, that this is this three-dimensional object, this is closer, this is further, this goes that way. And when you combine those different things, when the lighting and the shapes and the colors are all saying the same thing, then the perspective looks a lot more natural, a lot more believable. I loved reptiles growing up. I just always admired just the shape and the texture. Just something about them was real mystifying and magical to me. So this is fun for me. It says in the description that its eyes are like the rays of dawn. So I made this orangey colored eye, and I made this nice glow in it because that's going to make a lot more sense when I have some fire here. So it'll look like it's picking up some of the light from the fire also to justify the brightness. Because a nighttime scene, you wouldn't see a big bright yellow eye like that. Artistic license. Still working on my people. You know, this guy, it's fun making that scared expression on his face. I remember with my brothers growing up, let's do let's draw a picture and we're gonna draw a battle. You know, we would have battles. So I'm drawing my spaceships, and now I'm doing this to yours, and then, you know, my brother would draw another one, and I'd say, no, you can't do that. You can't just destroy everything. Oh man, it was ridiculous. So last week's video, Lito Honor says, your videos make me want to leave my tablet from time to time and go back to my paints. So for that, you earned yourself a new patron. All right, thank you very much. And thank you for reminding me. We post a bonus video for the patrons as a thank you for helping out with that $1 a month. If you don't do that, then I'm ever thankful for just viewing these free videos as well. Mina F says, I've studied drawing realistic people for a long time, but I can't paint for crap. I can't give you any critiques on painting. You don't need that anyway, but I would really suggest you practice your people more, mostly faces. Your bodies are pretty good. Your faces are the only flaw I can find in your paintings. So if you nail those, your paintings will be perfect. I have to disagree on one point. I mean, I appreciate your vote of approval that I'm only one well-done face away from perfection, but I don't think I'll be anywhere near perfect, even if you did like the faces that I painted. Thank you very much, One Jeep Cam, for the nice encouragement. I appreciate that. Lutz Albrecht says, I wish you would return to a more traditional step-by-step format rather than exploring generic basics of painting. I'm sure you are having fun exploring all that stuff. But to me, your tips on how to actually use those wall paints to achieve certain effects are more interesting than getting lost in the details of figure painting and human anatomy or similar. Okay, that's good feedback. You know, I don't think I can please everybody. You know, there's always going to be somebody that's not into the content that I'm doing, but I appreciate you saying that. JK's Always Learning says, hey Joe, have you done or can you illustrate how to grade your colors from dark to light on the sky before you add elements? I do explain a method that I use for larger scale things. In my video at learn.muraljoe.com, I have a how to paint sky and clouds video, where I talk about how to get that gradient. With gradients, I put the wet colors side by side and blend the middle together. And if I need to move over and do it again because the paint dries, because it's water-based, then I'm just careful to do the exact same thing so that it matches up when I overlap it. I just let it dry all the way, rather than trying to blend things continuously. If it doesn't match completely, I just put a cloud over the overlap, and that seems to work pretty good for me. Have you ever done fisheye perspective? I think every time you do a really big mural, you do that without noticing, because you know, when you're actually turning your head to look, it just feels like you should see those edges, so you naturally paint them in. What you're seeing, it's a little bit harder to accomplish on smaller scale. But I'm not sure that I've ever made it my mission to try to accomplish that fisheye perspective. If I were trying to do it, my goal would be just like in this one. Anything on up there, I'm going to imagine that I'm having to turn my head and that I'm seeing those edges that are on this side, and everything down here I want to see the top of it so that I don't have the same angle on everything, and then I'll get that perspective. Thank you, David Kuhn, for the nice encouragement there. Thank you, Joseph John Moylon, as well. I appreciate the nice compliments. Artistic Breeze says, thanks for doing this video. I'm working on some characters. I'm working on that same topic and researching that very subject. Well, wow, what a coincidence. That's cool. It truly helped me without reading and watching things. I hope you will value your paintings enough to sell them. Yeah, well, I think I will probably put this up for sale. I don't know that I'll want it hanging in my house. That'd be cool, I guess. Thank you very much for the nice encouragement there. I'm very happy to hear that. Thank you, S. Kirker, for the nice compliment there. I'm very happy to hear. And thank you everyone for watching. I always appreciate the views, and it's always a thrill for me to show off what I'm doing and talk about it. It's definitely a labor of love for me. I am talking about putting on a workshop sometime in September. Keep that on your radar. I'll let you know as it develops further. And if you don't already know about the videos that I have for sale at learn.muraljoe.com, take a look at my site and see I have sets of longer videos that you can download that are probably a little bit too boring for YouTube. And if you're really trying to get answers and build some skills, you might find those helpful. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.